He's cheating, he's gaslighting, he's controlling, the financial abuse. And I used to think, well, that's my fault. Do you ever feel judgment and shame when you try to explain and communicate what you've experienced with a narcissist? Well, this is exactly what I'm discussing in today's episode on my Trauma and Narcissism Redefined podcast. Massive welcome to you to the podcast today. This podcast drops every single Tuesday. So wherever you're listening to my podcast, please make sure that you follow, you subscribe. You can even come and watch me on YouTube. If you are watching this right now, then you'll see a little bit of my offices behind me. I've just got a new sticker there that says your mental health matters, because it does. So I'm still trying to get things up and running here because we've just moved in at the start of January. But if you're listening to it on the podcast and you want a little sneaky view of it, go over to YouTube and have a little look too. Now, I want to talk to you all about something that really has come up this week, and I think it's something really, really important for us to talk about. I put a post out on social media the other day about what coercive control is on the back of seeing some of the people on the Grammys, and you'll probably know who I'm talking about, that they were wearing a dress that didn't look like a dress, it looked like they were nude, basically. And there was a lot of talk about coercive control, narcissistic abuse, and what was happening. Now, I'm not necessarily going to talk about that in particular because I don't know what goes on behind closed doors for somebody, and I'm not here to judge anybody on what they choose to wear, not wear, or anything like that. But what it highlighted when I put some posts on social media about this was I was actually quite shocked, if I'm honest, about some of the comments that came really judging somebody, thinking that they were wearing something on purpose, that they were wearing that purely for marketing potential. Now, they may well have been doing that. I'm not here to say whether or not they weren't. But what really, really struck me was the judgment that was happening for this individual, this woman, and there was no scope for what if it was something else. What would she think if she read some of those comments where they were saying, no, it's just a publicity stunt. This is just for marketing, which again, I hold my hands up. It may well have been that. But what if it wasn't? And I think this is where we need to be really, really mindful of our words, because I know certainly from my perspective, when we talk about narcissistic abuse and indeed coercive control, psychological, emotional, financial abuse, there are no visible bruises, right? There's nothing that anybody can see. And very often this type of abuse happens behind closed doors. And the person who perpetrates that abuse, the narcissist, is very often very, very nice in public. And it can make it really, really challenging for those of us who experience abuse at the hands of narcissists, because very often it's non-physical abuse. It's psychological, it's emotional, it's financial, it's coercive, it's controlling, it's gaslighting, it's manipulation. And we don't carry the bruises of that, but it doesn't mean that the bruises and the scars don't run deep. And what absolutely astounded me was there was no thought in the comments about if a person read those comments and they were in an abusive relationship, what that would then do. And I challenged a few people on this. I said, what do you think this person may feel if they read this? And I had people coming back saying, yeah, but it's publicity, it's for marketing. And I said, it may well be, but let's say it isn't. What are they going to feel and think reading your comment? And very often I didn't get many answers back. But the premise of this is, if we are saying these things and judging people and saying what we think it is and thinking it isn't abuse, which it might not be, but if it is abuse, what we're doing is we are feeding into the hands of the abuser, because the person being abused at that point thinks, well, no one's going to believe me anyway, so there's no point me saying anything. And what we're doing is we're pushing these people further into the arms of the abuser, isolating them, shaming them, even gaslighting them into thinking they are the crazy ones, they're the weak ones, they're the stupid ones. These were all things that I thought when I was in my relationship with my ex-husband. Caroline, what's wrong with you? He's cheating, he's gaslighting, he's controlling, the financial abuse. And I used to think, well, that's my fault. And also because he would act so nicely in public, even to the extent, I remember sometimes when some of my friends would come around, he'd literally come in the kitchen and open the door and get the Hoover out, and they'd be like, oh, isn't he nice? He's such a great husband. Deliberately doing all of those to get praise and attention, narcissistic supply. making it, can you imagine then if I turn around and said, oh, well, he said this to me and he's doing that to me, they'd kind of then maybe question me. So it became more apparent then I would stay silent, which is exactly what the narcissist wants you to do, to stay silent, to isolate you, to make it feel like without me, you are nothing. And this is why we have to be really, really careful when we're dealing with non-physical domestic abuse, narcissistic abuse, where there are no broken bones or bruises. We don't see it. And that isn't to say that all these relationships are non-abusive. They may be, they may not be abusive at all. But we have to hold sensitivity, compassion, kindness, be very choosing with our words because of the just in case. And we live in a society where we're so quick to judge people on these things. And I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong in the assumptions of other people's relationships behind closed doors. What I'm saying is, if there is an abusive relationship and they see our comments or hear our words, what we're doing is we're making it very difficult for someone to come and share something with us, tell us something, because they will have a fear of being met with, you're stupid, you're a failure. I'm sure that isn't happening. So they won't necessarily share, and they will isolate themselves and shame themselves and feel stupid even more. And the reason why I know that is because that was me. And I'd love you to let me know, can you relate to that? You know, when you first started communicating your experience of narcissistic abuse, what were you met with? I know for me, not many people believe me, if I'm honest, at the start, because I think they thought maybe I was overreacting, maybe that these things weren't really happening and I was maybe just being a bit of a drama queen or oversensitive. Over the years, every single person, bar maybe one or two that are still in his circle, have come round to my way of thinking. They've seen it for themselves. But very often, in those moments initially when you're trying to communicate or explain what you're experiencing, when there are no physical signs with a narcissist, it makes it really challenging. And that's exactly what the narcissist wants to happen. They want to make you feel silent and isolated. So you are totally reliant on them. You start to lose your friends. You start to lose your family. As such, you start to make excuses for them. You start to watch maybe what you're wearing, what you're doing. You know, I know certainly for me, I used to think I'm not sexy enough or pretty enough. And I try and go and buy some nice underwear and things like this, because if they're off cheating in that scenario, then I need to do something about it. It's not just like he's a cheat, he shouldn't keep it in his pants. It was, I mustn't be pretty enough or sexy enough, and that's why he's looking elsewhere. That's what gaslighting and abuse does to you. You start to erode your sense of self, meaning you don't want to share it with someone else because you feel like a complete failure. You feel stupid. You feel worthless. And there is nothing worse than when you feel like that and you might start to communicate or maybe showcase these things and you're met with judgment. You're met with comments and phrases that maybe make you feel a certain way. And then you just think, well, there's no point. I'm just in this now. And you don't bother sharing. And I know there are so many people stuck in these types of relationships like that. That's why I'm so loud and vocal about the non-physical forms of narcissistic and domestic abuse. Things like coercive control, things like psychological abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse. These are abuses we do not see. And very often they're perpetrated by the narcissist. And they are like wolves in sheep's clothing, masters of disguise. So my invitation to all of you, you know, we see on social media, we see how people act and what they are, and, you know, maybe not wearing many clothing items even. But let's be mindful about the language we are using. And, you know, if you type something out or maybe share this with somebody else, just ask the question, it may not be, but what if it was? What would the person, if they are being abused, feel and think if they read your comment? Would it be an open door where they feel safe enough to share their experiences? Or is that comment going to really put that person underground where they feel like they can't share and they feel like they'll have to isolate themselves even more? And I thought this was a really, really important topic to share because, you know, the community that I have, and I'll pop some links in the show notes for you to come and join my groups, my broadcast channel over on Instagram, where it's a safe space. There is no judgment. And if there is anyone who's ever judgy, they are removed, they are blocked. I have had some conversations with people on my Facebook business page and personal profile, because I did share this on there, because I really wanted it to be an opportunity for education and awareness. And I think most people, when they say these things about people, particularly in the public eye, they're not actually thinking twice about the effects that that might have on somebody. We're judging them on how they look or what money they might be earning. But you know what? They're still a human being, and abuse can still happen across the board in any relationship, whatever that may look like. And I think we need to be really careful about all of those things. And I know all of you listening in will recognize that, but also check in with yourself sometimes too. If you're judging someone maybe in the public eye with how they look or how they dress, just think about it. You know, we live in that judgmental society. Just take a step back. Maybe they're doing or acting a certain way because they feel worthless. Maybe they're doing that because they're being made to do that. Who knows? And I don't know. And I'm not here to say that I am the font of all knowledge at all. But I like to sit in a place of compassion, of kindness, of curiosity. And I'd love to know if you can relate to that. Can you relate to feeling like you couldn't share your experiences with other people for fear of maybe the response that you might get? Please let me know. Drop me a message on Instagram or on Facebook, or even email me at hello@carolinestrawson.com, because I would love to share how many of you share your stories, because it just means I'm going to go out there even louder and share all of this information as well. And of course, I'll keep things anonymous too. So take care. Remember, I'm always here to listen to you. I believe you, and there is no judgment. Remember, my ex-husband left me. I was still in that abusive relationship. And I think sometimes we feel stupid, we feel weak when we start to look back. But you know what? Your nervous system is trying to keep you safe. And sometimes that might be staying in the relationship to start off with. So take care, my friends. I hope this was really helpful for many of you, for some validation of, even if people don't believe you, even if they're judging you on all of this and not thinking that it's real. It is real. It absolutely is real. And I 100% believe you. So take care, lots of love, and I'll see you on the next episode.